How is the procurement carried out? Today we will discuss this question. Procurement is a structured method for obtaining goods and services. Always remember, private companies or commercial companies have a lot of versatility in their procurement activities. However, since government entities spend public funds, they usually have to comply with the laws, rules and regulations, specifically governing each step of the procurement process. So as a project manager, you will be dealing with several procurement on project as a project manager, and this phase is performed with every project procurement. Note also that the contract life cycle starts and ends throughout the project's life. Tips for a project manager. Although project managers are not often expected to lead the procurement process, this is something done by the procurement department. In legal matters, negotiation or management, these aspects of the procurement process have to be familiar to them. As a project manager, you must understand these processes, but this is not directly your job. Procurement department perform procurement work, but as a project manager, you must understand the needs of the procurement experts, provide the enough information to the experts, and then work with the procurement department throughout the procurement period. The project manager is responsible for the management of procurement when there is not a procurement department within the organization. I am repeating this sentence. The project manager is responsible for the management of procurement when there is not a procurement department within the organization. So let's assume there is no procurement department, and as a project manager, you are the one who will manage procurement for your project. So what should you do then? Create a management plan, procurement management plan document. Second is a plan for how contract will be managed. That is called a procurement strategy. And third is you will have to produce a statement of work. So I'm going to start my talk with the point number 3, that is a procurement statement of work. If you are just assigning some of your project work to third party, that third party, how that will understand what they are going to perform for your project work. So obviously you will explain in detail about each and every activity which you want to procure for your project. In project management, the procurement statement of project work describes the item procured in sufficient detail to allow the prospective seller to know if they have the capacity to provide the products and deliverables to the buyer. As a project manager, if you do not produce enough and comprehensive statement of work for procurement activities, then you will face huge problems later on in your project life cycle. So it is important to take note that each individual procurement requires a statement of work. Then next step is you will finalize a document that is called Request for Proposal, RFP. A request for proposal is a document that solicits proposal, often made through a bidding process by an agency or a company interested in procurement of the products, services to potential suppliers to submit business proposal. Next is called Request for Information. The RFI is a solicitation document used to obtain general information about products, services or suppliers. It is an information request not binding on either the supplier or the purchaser and is often used prior to specific requisition for item. And last is request for quotation. A request for quotation is a business process in which a company or public entity requests a quote from supplier or seller for the purchase of specific products or services. RFQ generally means the same thing as call for bids and invitation for bid. An RFQ typically involves more than the price per item. Then next is a seller response. The prospective seller takes action at this stage and the buyer awaits the answer. This means all sellers have received statement of work and request for proposal and request for quotation document. Now the prospective seller take action means they have received those documents, and this is your time that you will have to wait for their response. The prospective vendor also means the seller examines the bidding document and decides if they wish to submit an answer or the suggestion in order to try to win the job. Prospective sellers will also be able to request queries as part of selection process. Now this is something called request for information. Buyer responses are exchanged with all prospective sellers. Organizational policies. Organizations may use several different methods to select a seller. These methods may be dictated by law or internal policies. If a buyer receives competing submissions from many prospective sellers, the buyer might ask for presentation from all the candidates. Organizations can pick a seller using a variety of different methods. These methods can be determined by law or by domestic policy. When several prospective sellers submit a competing request to a buyer, the buyer can request a presentation from all candidates. And the final step is the procurement must be administered and controlled once the contract is signed. It requires ensuring that all contract conditions are fulfilled. It also means that the contract is regulated and only approved adjustments are made. As the procurement work is done, questions like what is in the contract and what is not in it, what does a common contract section really means, the procurement department will help to resolve these problems with the project manager.